All right. Thanks for coming on over, man. Welcome, welcome.
Good to be back. How you
Yep.
doing, man? How was your week?
Uh, oh
Work and
my
everything all
goodness.
good?
I'm ticked about work, man. I
What?
had probably a roller coaster of a week. Um, I think so this has been like a culmination of just like months with this company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for those that don't know, I'm a retail store manager. And within that store, we also have a pharmacy that I'm in charge of as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the direction our company is going um, has just been making like life a nightmare. So I mean, the simple things that anybody can complain about is like pay.
Right.
So every year we get and this is going to sound like such first world problems, but every year in November we get our bonus, and it's all based on basically how you ran your store and stuff, right?
Okay.
So if you ran a successful business and you're like, okay, um, on average, my gross profit is $50,000 a month. You're just like rolling in money. Okay, this is after all expenses are paid, everything.
Okay.
Um, and then at the end of the year, they take that money and they're supposed to say, okay, well, you did a really good job running your business. Then you're rated on your leadership behaviors, which are just various things. Like I don't want to get too into detail because it'll give away who I work for.
Okay.
Um, but it's just like your customer service and how you lead your team, basically. And I am one of those. I'm what you would consider a high performer um, in all of those aspects.
Oh,
Like
my
all year
boy.
long. Yeah, all year long they're like, hey, you're crushing it. You're doing a great job all year. Then in November, we find out that we're not getting a bonus, right? And most
Oh,
store managers use that bonus to catch up on credit card payments, just whatever's going on in life. And for me, it was we were going to use it to put a down payment on a house, and that way we could move out of this apartment and just move forward in life, right?
right, right, right.
So,
Because it's supposed to be. I'm not asking for exact
mhm.
figures, but I'm assuming it's a pretty substantial amount or enough to where you actually looking forward to it and planning around that amount, right? Like that's
Yeah. So I mean I think I can say it. I mean it's a $10,000 bonus.
yeah. Okay, that's definitely
Yeah.
something that you can. Okay, that you can
Yeah.
definitely plan around, like that's like, all right, if you're
Yeah.
if you like expect to have that money by, November, then that's like
Right. And the thing is right before Christmas, that's
right.
when
Yeah,
we
yeah,
do our
yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
shopping, all that good stuff. But that's generally the money that I use to just kind of stabilize my life because by July or August we kind of start hitting our low point because that's typically in my experience when our rent goes up, just like when
Mm,
inflation like really kicks in,
okay.
and it just put us down. So I was super down about that. But at the end of the day, it's a bonus, right? If we get it, great. If we don't, it's still a bonus. So I was like, okay, I can learn to live with that. Then I got my review on Monday, and my review basically my first year, I was out of a 5-star scale. I was a 3.7, which, it's close enough to a 4 where you are considered it, exceeding expectations or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then it moves on down to achieving expectations. So my first year, I got a 3.7. The next year, I got a 3.6. And then this year, I got a 3.4.
Oh,
And each year, I'm taking on more and more responsibilities. Like I'm doing a lot more, whether that's projects, cleaning up other stores, just doing various things to take care of my company, take care of the business and the rest of their businesses, right? So I'm, all year long in my head, I'm thinking I'm just balling out. And when I sat my manager down, I was like, hey, man, so we got to talk about this review because this is inaccurate, and another piece of information um, that I left out is my boss would be called a district manager,
mm-hmm.
and I think in the past year I've had 3 different bosses. So my first boss, her, she loved me. Everything was cool, sending me all over God's green earth to fix stores and stuff. Then I got transferred to another district. Had him for 6 months. It was cool. Everything was good. I fixed up his store. He was very happy. And then right before review time, he like ooh, almost said it. They
Mhm.
almost decide, or this corporation decided to cut half of all corporate employees,
Oh shoot.
and he was one of the people that got let go. So he got let go right before review time. I get a new boss, and this new boss just rails my review. And I sat him down and I was like, listen, like, you cannot tell me from, this my first year to now I've gotten worse as a store manager.
Right.
That
Plus,
my
how do they
leadership.
how do like actually like evaluate your performance? Like, how do they? What all do they? I know you mentioned like they take certain like criteria into account, but like how do they
Mhm.
do? Like, is there like just the reports that from each store that they base it on, or because like you said, if you had that one district manager as your boss for like 6 months or whatever, like surely he knows what's going on and like what you're up to and what you're doing, how you're doing and
Yeah.
all that stuff. But how does like the new guy know like what's going on? Does he not look at like the previous person's like reports and all that, or how do they do that?
So I think what they do is my manager had rated me fairly high to where
Hmm.
I was exceeding expectations of a store manager, which I am. Um, and then we go and do this thing called calibration, where they take you and they compare you against all of the other store managers. And my previous boss would have been able to say, no, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. This is why he's valuable, such and such, and kind
Hmm.
of defend my rating against these other store managers. But he wasn't able to. He wasn't with the company. And my new boss didn't have anything to fight with, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So some of the stuff that's on paper, it won't really do that person justice. Like if I were to text, it's basically a resume.
Right. Right.
A
Right.
resume is just the tip of the iceberg with a person.
Right.
So, I was pissed about the review, pissed about the bonus, because of both of those things. That just means less money overall. So
Right.
now we're in a situation where we're paying so much for rent. It just like my life flashed before my eyes basically when he said that. So I was just like, you know what, whatever. Tuesday came, I'm back to doing a whole bunch of stuff. They're back to considering me a quote unquote high performer.
Mm.
Um, but I didn't get rated like one, which pissed me off because I basically sat my boss down and was like, look, um, I'm not going to continue to take on these projects, clean up your stores, or do anything that's outside of my job. Because if you're going to say I'm a 3.4,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to be a 3.4. There's no need for me to take on extra stress if I'm just going to get rated the same,
Yeah, or
And
if that's gonna affect like your performance negatively because you're gonna be like
Mhm.
so stressed and you're gonna be all over the place and not be able to
Right,
perform as well as you could if yeah.
right. I agree 100%. So, then I started thinking, and I'm going to reference a text I had sent you earlier. Then I started thinking, right, you
Mm,
know, when is it, and I guess I'll ask you this, um, when is it time to quit a job?
mm,
I've spent 5, almost 6 years with this company, um, busted my ass, doing everything in my power to keep it. I mean, our hours are 7:30 to 5, but I'm always on the clock. I'm never not working,
right.
right? Um, when is it time to quit your job, man?
I think the moment you start asking yourself that
Mhm.
is a clear sign that maybe
Yeah.
it's time. Although, I mean, obviously, there's a lot to take into account before doing so, but I mean, it's a difficult question depending on each individual's situation, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, you've been there for 5, almost 6 years. In that time, have you felt like you were rewarded and you felt like you were appreciated and all that, or has every year been a little bit like well, shit, I'm doing all
So
this and
and that's where I had like that. it's not really like an epiphany, but I just kind of started having that conversation with myself, which,
Hmm.
um, the question you asked is, have I been treated fairly? So I'll put it like this. When I started 5 years ago, I was making $33,000 a year. Today I'm making 60 with a supposed $10,000 bonus on there.
Hmm.
So in 5 years, more than doubled my salary, and I'm bonus eligible. I'm able to work 7:30 to 5. I can leave early if I want. I'm on salary. Um, when I start looking at those things, that's when I'm like, do I really am I just mad right now? Will I get over it later?
Right.
Or do I really like, want to leave this job? And
Yeah.
I started thinking about, just various different types of people, right? Like,
Hmm.
how certain people deal with things. And one of the things, or one of the biggest questions is are you choosing your job over your mental health, right?
Right.
Are you sacrificing your sanity for a paycheck? And, I had to ask myself that question, right? And I started looking a bit deeper about a year ago. I'm not taking anything now because I cannot afford the prescription, which is insane. Um,
Yeah.
but I had to go see a doctor. I go through depression, anxiety, all that fun shit, and they put me on medication. And then once I got to that store, you remember it was out in the I guess I'll say it, yeah, it was out in the hood. Like, it was a very rundown store out in the location. We got crackheads out front, people jumping over the counter, stealing cigarettes, like just
Yeah, I remember
crazy
you.
shit.
Yeah, you telling me. Yeah.
Yeah. Once I got there, my mental health started spiraling, but it was one of those things where I'm like, hey, if I work hard enough, I can get promoted out of here. I just need to stick it out. And I went and I saw a doctor. He recommended therapy, put me on medication, started taking the medication. And then probably 2 months after I got on the medication, I get a call that I'm moving up to a better store with a $7,000 pay raise. I went from 53,000 to 60.
Mm.
Um, so that obviously, I mean, that did something for my mental state. I was very happy to be there. But then once that side of it kind of wears off, because I got moved there, it's I spend about $250 in fuel every month, which is just it's another
Yeah.
expense. Yeah. Not to mention oil changes, tire changes,
Yeah.
brake
Yeah. Yeah.
changes,
All
all that stuff.
maintenance that you got to do in your car. Yeah.
Yeah, and the financial reward kind of started wearing off because I realized my company is just not keeping up with like the inflation, and then my mental state started coming back where everything is bleak, and do like when you hit those moments, and I'll put myself way out there. When you have those moments where it is easier to run your car into the side of the fucking highway than it
Mm.
is to go in that day, I think that's when it's time to move on from that job, come hell
I
or high
mean,
water.
yeah, but and that's, I mean, that's some definitely some hard stuff, to think about. I mean, let alone like talk about openly, like even like just thinking about it with your like on, in your head and all that. That's hard enough, but
Yeah.
having to actually talk about that and being able to say it out loud, it's
Yeah.
tough, man. Like I know what you, maybe not with the car because I barely drive nowadays. I don't even have a car. I sold my car
Your
last year.
your instance is walking off a cliff. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's me running into a car. Like you'd be the one driving, I'd be the one running into the car.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I think
Yeah.
like the thing is like you were mentioning that when you were in that one store that was in a bad neighborhood and all that stuff, that's when you
Yeah.
started noticing that your mental health was just spiraling and worsening every time you were there, and you just like, all right, let's just stick through and all that. But do you really think it was the job itself or this? Because I mean, imagine yourself in another job, okay,
Yeah.
or any other previous jobs that you've had. Do you remember having a moment like that where not, maybe not where you're thinking about like driving off the side of
Yeah.
the road into a tree or whatever, but like
Yeah.
have you had thoughts where like, fuck, man, I can't. This is just
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah, man. And really, see, the thing is, and this is what I always tell people, like it's not really the job. It's always a culmination of things. Like people naturally human nature is the path of least resistance. And people will likely pinpoint their jobs as their main stress point, but that's just a part of it, right? Like I have a 5-year-old, I have a wife, I have bills I have to pay, and there's a certain standard of living that you have to have when you're here, of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, right? Like if
Yeah.
somebody comes into my house and they're like, "Oh, you don't have paper towels, you don't have napkins, you don't have," and it's like, no, like I can't afford that, right? And then there's that judgment piece. So but one of the things that hits me, and it hits me the hardest, and I think it's just, I don't know if it's the way I grew up or whatever, but when my kid wants, like a $2 Snicker bar, and I'm like, hey, we can't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
I can't get you this toy, I can't get you that thing that you want. um
Yeah. That's
that's
gotta be tough.
that's usually when it hits, and I start thinking, why can't I get my kid this stuff? You
Yeah.
know?
Because I imagine
And
you think back to, I mean, we come from pretty humble backgrounds, both of us. Like
yeah,
we're not, at any point where I don't even know if I'd ever consider myself even close to middle class at any point in my
yeah,
life.
yeah,
And so I think I can imagine, at least because I don't have any kids of my own, but I can imagine where like I would be thinking like when I was a kid and I asked my parents for a Snickers or whatever, and they were saying like, no, we can't or whatever. I would feel just like, how am I going to recover from this emotionally?
yeah,
And
right.
and knowing how that feels, having to say that to your own kid, that just must be like, fuck,
Yeah, and I think I feel it more because, and this is where, like, I don't know if this is like dual personality or what, but this is where it comes into play, man. Is I look at everything I have, right, and now I'm gonna start addressing on how, if you are in this situation to where, you're blaming your job, you're unhappy,
Mm,
suicide's on the table, you're just, you have all this stuff going on, and the pressure is just caving in on you. Sometimes what I do is I have a honest conversation with myself, right? It's
yeah,
okay to feel sad about your situation, 100%. It's okay to, not want to do it anymore. Like I have considered several times just saying, you know what? We're going to go live in the woods and, just just be cave people, But I went home and I went into my daughter's room specifically, and I just kind of looked around, right? She has a bed, hundreds of toys. Okay. Um, she has all these different things. She has an Xbox Series X at home, which not a lot of people have, right? She plays it.
mhm,
She's playing Minecraft constantly. Um, we have these things in the house. She has a stable life. And I think I had to ask myself, okay, is she gonna be upset if she doesn't get this specific thing? Because when we get home, she has all these things in her room. And maybe it's
yeah.
just the initial rejection that stings the most, right?
I think
It's the
so.
initial, yeah.
Exactly. And I think as
And
kids, obviously, we didn't notice that.
yeah.
You know.
And then, I start doing and acting very differently at home, where I'm like, hey, okay, we don't have these things, but let me show you what I used to do, right? And we have this, yeah, and this will bring back memories for you. we
Mm,
we live in an apartment complex, and right over the fence there's some, just a bunch of woods.
mm.
And I said, you know what, let me show you what I used to do when I was a kid, bored in the house,
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
do anything. And I take her out to the woods, we pick up sticks. One of the sticks looks like a gun, right? And we're just playing, and all of this is 100% free, costs nothing, right? And suddenly all that stuff, all that financial pressure of just, I can't provide for my family, it just kind of washed away, because at the end of the day, you can't provide everything,
Yeah,
and
and I
you
think that's where
cannot.
you're. Yeah, and I was gonna
Yeah.
start on that exact point that you
Mhm.
just made, like because I think the problem is that we're blinded by, or I'm not saying that you're comparing yourself to others or anything, but we kind of
But
subconsciously
we
do
do. We
compare,
do.
and
Yeah.
be it with social media or whatever. But like you compare yourself, and you're like, all right, well, I have this, but now I want this. It's like the
Yeah.
oldest tale in the book, like that's everybody does it. Everybody has that thing like, well, I want that too, right? Or
Yeah.
even your kids will be like, yeah, I want this and I want it now, and,
Yeah.
and that and plus, we're living in, I don't want to sound like, an old boomer or whatever, but we're living in an age where like everything is served to us like immediately. And if we don't
Yeah.
want it, we just, scroll. We scroll
Yeah.
up or down or left or right or whatever, and we got something new. So
Yeah.
like it's completely like, I think here's the problem, that like in the last, I want to say like the last 20 years, technology has advanced so quickly, and especially like social technology, right?
Mhm.
That the human brain is just not like, even though we've adapted to it, obviously, but there's no actual study on the side effects, the psychological side effects and repercussions that all this can have on ourselves, like the on human, as as an animal, as a being, like
Yeah.
it's something that we don't know what this does to us, really. We're starting to
Right.
see it. We're starting to see it, way more cases of suicides and depression and anxiety and a whole bunch of things that just affect us day to day, and especially like in the Western world, the first world countries and all that. Like we see it. We're starting to see it. There's a trend, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you look back, it's really just skyrocketed in the last like 20 years, maybe, or even less,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
10, 15 years
Well,
that
because you got to think
skyrocketed.
what it does to you, right? When we were kids, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. We didn't
Mhm.
watch a lot of TV. We may have put on like Goodfellas or Donnie Brasco, but we never really watched a lot of
No,
television,
I mean, we
right?
watch cartoons and movies and stuff like that, like
But
occasionally, but it wasn't like that's all we
see
did. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
through that there was little advertising. We
Mhm.
weren't shown a lot of things. The only time we were shown things is when we would go into like Walmart or
Right. Yeah.
the mall or whatever. And I think what's going on, because you had mentioned the increase in suicides, depression, anxiety, all these mental health issues. What's going on, and really just as like a man, right? Like as a man,
Mhm.
my main mission in life is to provide. And when I see all these things, my daughter sees all these things.
Right. Yeah.
She's seeing it constantly, right? You and I weren't seeing it constantly. We weren't asking for things constantly when we were kids because we didn't see a lot of things to ask for.
Mhm.
And then, our parents didn't have to deal with
Oh
that
yeah,
initial
for sure.
disappointment as much as I have to deal with now. Being like, "Hey, sorry, we can't do that," right? And what that does to a lot of men's like mental state is, "Oh, I can't provide. I can't do this. I
Yeah,
can't do this
and that
thing,"
makes you feel like you're failing, not only as a dad or a husband or whatever, but as a
Mhm.
man, as a human.
Yeah.
It makes you
Yeah,
feel
as a
like
human.
you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, which
Yeah.
in and of itself, it's already like, I mean, it sounds antiquated, but it's biological, really. I think it sounds
Yeah.
like, like you're misogynistic or whatever, but it's not that
Yeah.
at all. It's just like it's in our DNA to like just want to, and it could be, obviously a woman as well. I'm not saying like, I'm saying as a human, it's like survival. And how do we
Yeah.
survive? Well, if this is, because the thing is, like, it gets to a point where the things you see like on ads or whatever, it gets to a point where it like tricks the brain to think that that's what you need to survive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, before, where it's like, maybe it's just like, oh, there's some berries, I need them berries to survive. There's
Right.
an animal, I need to kill that animal to eat and survive. Water, I need that to survive. Now it's like I see these things, and my brain thinks that that's what I need to survive, because it's selling it that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, and,
Yeah.
and, and it gets to a point where like you see everybody else with all these things on like, whatever, phones or whatever, and you're like, well, everybody else has them, so I also need it because that's what I need to survive. So I
Yeah.
it's really tricky because there's no way of escaping it, really. To be honest,
Yeah,
there's
because
no real solution besides, I don't know, just not having a phone or something. I don't know. Like
yeah,
it's but
getting
that
off the grid.
yeah, but that already is like like how are you gonna live, you know? Unless like you said earlier, you go off into the woods and just live off the land and all that, which to me sounds amazing. But then you think about it, it's like, well, yeah, but there's also really cool stuff about technology
Yeah,
and all that.
yeah.
And it's
The
really hard, honestly, to have
yeah,
a balance of both worlds, I guess, of the real world, and you know the world that they sell you online, and it's getting worse day by day. I mean, just it's
yeah.
just
Because there's advertising for everything, but I think the like what I'm doing to handle it, right? Like that's one thing I wanted to talk about. So, yes, I'm pissed about my occupation choice, right?
mhm.
I have 3 different degrees, and I'm not like an uneducated person. Like I did go to school,
Yep.
and I think it's really just finding out. Um, how do I say it? Is that I didn't need to do all that to be where I am today. I didn't need to be stressed out about school. It's like we find things to stress ourselves out about so that we can be successful in the long run. And then to find out that after that long run has finally like arrived, right? Like I
Mhm.
started when I was 18, 19 years old, and I'm on the long run. We're about to hit 30 this year.
Mhm.
And I'm hitting that road where I'm like, damn, I really did not even need to go to school. Like we think about
Yeah.
the education,
Yeah,
right? And
I think about that a lot too, and I think a
yeah,
lot of people think about that. Like, was it really just a waste of time and money to do
right.
all what I did? Because I'm not, especially if you're in a situation where you're not actually using, or you're not you're whatever you studied, whatever you went to school for, and all that, like you're not actually applying it to your day to day. That's when you're like, well, shit. I mean, then what?
Yeah.
Why the hell did I do it then?
Yeah. What was
And
it
I
all
think about
for?
that like every day, basically.
Right.
Um,
And but then that kind of turns into another aspect of life, which is not as a man, not as a woman, as a human being.
yeah,
We
yeah,
all have one desire, and that one desire is to be valued, right? So you
mhm,
go and you get that degree, and you're like, this is going to make me valuable, right? And then you find out that you're not valued. It's a wonderful term that we use in my corporation called "Do you feel undervalued?" Right?
mm, hmm,
Um, yeah. I mean, point blank, I think it's at the end of the day, we all seek to be valued, and when we are undervalued, we try to take a look at our lives and decide, okay, what can I do differently to make myself more valuable? Well, my how I'm dealing with it is I am valuable. And, every bit of knowledge that I have in my mind is valuable. Well, hold on, not every bit. Some of that shit is, you know, but so yeah, some of that shit is crazy. But I have
no,
I
but
have
as a
values.
human being, you are a functioning,
Yeah,
valuable, capable human being, and
yeah,
you don't have
and
to
I think
have people
it's
question that.
yeah, and I think it's up to you to determine, are you valuable?
Right.
And if you're not, right? If you are sitting on your couch eating potato chips, playing video games all day, okay,
Mhm.
are you valuable? Is this why you're upset? Is this
Right.
why your life isn't going the way you're planning? But if you're out here, whether you went to school or not, if you're out here working, you're working your jobs and you're doing things to progress your life every
Mhm.
day. You are a valuable person. I value people like that day in, day
Yeah.
out. And sometimes those people might need intervention. I had an intervention with my old boss where, he would sit me down and he'd be like, look, man, like you are a very good manager. I feel like you might be getting a little complacent. And I was like, I am. I want more challenges. I want more things to do. I'm bored with just running a store,
Hmm.
right? And then that's when all the projects started coming. They gave me stuff because running a store, man, you just got to make sure shelves are full, your customers are happy, and you can just chill all day.
Right.
And I told him like, yeah, I'm bored in here. I want to go do stuff. And when he recognized that, that's when I felt valued, is that you are doing your store really, really well. You're doing it so well that you look bored at work. Let me give you some more stuff to do. And, it gets my mind thinking like, okay, I'm valued. My work is valued and they trust me to go do this thing. And what I'm dealing with now and how I'm telling my boss because I was undervalued this year is I'm done with the projects because
Mhm.
I did all of those things to find out at the end of the year that you guys did not value any of my efforts
Right.
at all.
So
So
yeah,
now,
you're saying like, yeah, you asked for the challenge, you passed the challenge, and then they're like, all right, cool.
yeah, they're like,
And
good job,
then
you
they
did
just
what we wanted
yeah,
you to.
pat on the
And I'm
back
like, all
and
right,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So now it's turning into a situation where I don't want your value. I want to value
Mhm.
myself more, and I'm going to. And the first thing I'm going to do is tell you, I'm not doing this shit. You're
Right.
going to find somebody else, that you can trick into that, but I'm going to do my store to the best of my ability, and I'm done. And I had been doing projects for years, like just cleanups after cleanups, people who
Mhm.
can't run their stores. So that's how I've been dealing with that is really just taking a look inward, looking at the things that I have, the apartment that I have. Is it too small for us? Not really. We have 3 people in our household. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. My only
Mhm.
issue is it's too expensive. And the best thing
Right.
is that's fixable. I can fix that, right? I can change that situation in my life by just moving to another place. Is it the easiest thing? No, but it can
Yeah,
be
I was
done.
gonna ask like how like actually feasible is that? Like how like yeah, it's easy like you can change that's something you can change for sure.
Yeah.
That's within your power, but like how accessible is that option? Like on
So
like truly.
so you have to make some financial maneuvers that aren't exactly above board, right? Like there are some things that I'm considering doing to, I guess, and I don't want to be too vague about this because there could be somebody going through the same situation, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes you have to cheat the system. And, with apartments and stuff, breaking leases, like review your contracts, find loopholes. If there are no loopholes, put your company. If you work for a corporation, 9 times out of 10, they have resources to help you in bad situations.
Mhm.
And managers typically won't tell you about that because they want to save the company money. Just various different things. You can put pressure somewhere and
Right.
you will get the help that you need. So what we have to do in my situation is we're going to go through a long couple months. Holidays are going to be really rough for us this year as far as like Christmas and all the presents and stuff. Um, but we're going to pinch our pennies right now when we have to take our car to get serviced. I'm gonna get an estimate for the repairs on the car. Should total
Mhm.
anywhere from like $3,000 or so. I'm gonna turn that into my company and tell them that I need my car to get to work.
Right.
You guys have to
Okay.
fix it, right?
Yeah.
And then they're gonna cut me that check. I'm gonna have to use that check. I will put a few repairs on the car, new tires, new brakes, but I'm gonna take the rest of it, pay off my credit cards so my credit can build, so that in April, when my lease is up, I will um, hopefully have my tax returns on top of a paycheck to break my lease here or break
Mhm.
the last month and put down on a home. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but it can be done. A lot of my I get a lot of my financial advice from just um, people who are more well off than me. I'll say
Right.
that. And if you don't know anybody, I'm sure there's somebody on YouTube. But there's always financial maneuvering when it comes to that. It is never an easy thing to try to get out of a bad situation without a few scratches, right?
Right. But I think one of the main issues that a lot of people will have is, first of all, realizing that they're in that situation, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And realize like admitting to themselves that they need to get out of whatever situation they're in.
yeah.
So be it with a job, going back to your question of when do you think you need like when is it time to quit your job or whatever, like first of all, realizing that you're even considering that question,
Right.
that's already a challenge within in and of itself, because it's like sometimes people are so blinded by, but like you said earlier, when you were like, uh, everything, your week was going like shit, and it had to come to the point where you're like, all right, let me just look back, reflect on what I have, and be grateful for that. And like
Yep.
that, getting to that point is not easy. A lot of people are just so blinded by a
Yeah.
shitty week, somebody that just cut them off in traffic. I don't know, whatever it is that just like pisses you off or whatever, and you're blinded by that, and you don't see, how do I get? First of all, you may not even realize you're drowning. You know what I'm saying? Like you're in that situation, you don't even realize you're drowning, so you can't even possibly start to think about how am I going to save myself from drowning, right?
Right. And
That
that's
happens
the
a lot.
thing, is you have to, and I learned this very early on. I'm not sure who taught me, but I think you and I have always been like this.
Mhm.
Just as like growing up, like the one story that I still tell to this day is when you and I we were playing in the woods, I slipped off that log and that branch kind of
Mhm.
like went into my arm. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know if you remember that or
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we were young. We were
I
we
thought
were
you were going to
young.
tell another story with trees,
Oh
branches,
no.
and
No, that'll be a good one,
quicksand.
a good metaphor of how to get out of the mud later. But when that branch went through my arm, right, it's very easy to panic.
Oh yeah.
But we went home. We didn't run. There was no crying or anything like that, and you patched it up, right? And it was one of those things where that situation could have been handled so many different ways, right? And an even better story is when I stabbed your hand with that spear.
Dude, I see it. I look at my hand every day, and I remember that.
Yep. And what did we do in that situation, right? Like there was the initial shock,
Yeah,
but
but at
then
no point were we like, first thing we did was just first of all wash it off, try to get something to stop the
yeah,
bleeding, um,
yeah,
and
stop the bleeding. That
yeah,
that's the important
we
part.
our reaction was, and we were, I mean, we weren't that. I mean, we were 18, but well, I was, yeah, I
No
was
shot,
18,
bro.
you were 17, so we're still young, but we weren't like kids, like we weren't like little kids. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, I'm thinking like 15, 16.
No,
Because by
'cause
the time we were 17 and 18, we were drinking beer and like doing dumb
oh
shit
wait, yeah, that
outside.
might have. That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I was 17. You were 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we were
Mm,
but you could have panicked. And 16, 17, if you talk to anybody that age now, they're fucking dumb. Like I could only imagine what they would do in that situation, right?
Probably film
And
it and upload it on TikTok.
and the thing is you said the first thing you did is stop the bleeding. And for anybody, that is going through that situation where their
Yeah,
job is taking a toll on their mental health and all this stuff, you have to stop the bleeding. And how
you
do you
gotta,
do
yeah,
that?
you gotta
You
find
sit
find the wound and stop the bleeding.
Yeah,
That's what I did.
have a conversation with yourself, because likely you are standing in your way, right? Like I was standing in my way. What I was
Yeah.
going to do, how I was going to handle this situation is last Friday I was going to call this company, not my company, but the company that handles leave of absences. I was going to
Mhm.
take a month-long leave of absence for my mental health, to get myself back on track. And during that month, I was going to apply for new jobs, find another job, right? And
Mhm.
this whole month would be unpaid,
Right.
right? My bills would come into question. I would be late on rent, undoubtedly. And my life could have spiraled out of control from there, from that one decision. And I decided in my own bubble that there is another way to handle this as opposed to just quitting outright.
Hmm.
If you have to take a leave of absence, by all means, you do that if you can afford that. But in my situation, a leave of absence is you're on the time clock to find another job, and if you don't, your whole life's gonna fall apart, right? I was gonna send Sam to go live with her parents if everything fell apart. I was gonna go live with my mom, and it would have it just what kind of quality of life is that? So I ran through all of these thoughts in my head over just a few days, probably up until Thursday. And then Friday came. It came to the point where I was going to make that call, and I was like, you know what? I'm putting more unnecessary pressure on myself. There's got to be a better way. And I sat down quickly, or not quickly, but calmly, went through all of my options. What can I do to fix this situation? And I do think I want to find another job because there are a couple things that happen, right? You have a shit day and you drag it out for a week. You have a shit month and you drag it out for a year, right? Um, if I think that is what was doing, was just taking bad news personally and just applying it to my regular life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's something that I think we're all guilty of some sort of semblance to that, where we take a bad instance, a bad second, and just ruin a whole minute, a whole hour, a whole day, a whole whatever. And that, I mean, we're all guilty of doing that, and it's hard not to, because mentally it just shuts you down. And you're like, all right, well, now everything is shit.
Yeah.
And that's a scary place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important, going back again to, like, it's important first to realize it, like you said, realize what's going on, then stop the bleeding and have a plan of action to see, all right, I'm here, how do I get to here? From point A, which is where I'm at right now, how do I get to point B or any other point, and how do I get out of here? Both, I mean, if it has to be like economically, okay, will that help you mentally? Sure. I mean, that's definitely going to happen. But then if we think about your situation, for example, once let's say you do find another job, whatever it may be, it could be a whole different industry. It could be, whatever. What if you find yourself in that situation again? You know what I'm saying? Because
exactly,
it doesn't matter if it's retail, whatever it is, it's about the principle of finding the right balance between feeling challenged enough to where you feel like you're valuable, and then actually being valued by the company or whatever, so that you don't need to have that whole, vicious cycle of, I need more, but I don't feel like, what more I'm doing is being valued. And so you come into that vicious cycle of like, all right, well, what do I do? And then maybe it's just going to repeat itself again. Like, all right, fine. You find another job. You're there for a year, two, whatever. And then even if it's better pay, you don't want to sacrifice your mental health just for money, because then you're just selling your soul, which some people do, but
No, I mean it's 100% true. You're trading your mental health for a paycheck, and my advice to anybody that may or may not be, or may be doing that, is just don't, man. You have a job, you have a job description, do your job and go home. Leave your job right where it's at. If you feel like you're taking work home with you, silence your phone. There is nothing in any company I've ever worked for that requires you to have a cell phone. Any problem that happens when you're not there. So I'm a manager, I'm on salary. We're quote unquote always on the clock.
Right.
Nowhere in my employee handbook or whatever does it say that I need to have a cell phone. So when my boss asked me, "Hey, I called you. How come you didn't answer?" Oh, because that's my personal line. If you need to reach me outside of work, can we possibly talk about a company phone? Or is there a better way for you to communicate me outside of building on my expenses? Because I'm not gonna go and get a phone just so you can talk to me, right? If you want to reach me, you can get me a company phone, and then I'll always answer that. But until that day happens,
unless it's something written, like if it's a company phone, then that's part of your contract or whatever agreement you may have with that company, and then that already that becomes part of your responsibility, and then obviously you're going to have to carry that around, but and that, by doing so, you're accepting that those conditions on your end, where you have to be on your phone, or you have to have your phone on you, but then they also have to compensate in some way or another. I'm like 200% guilty of I guess doing way more than what I'm supposed to do at work. Like I'm supposed to be at work from 8:30 to 6. So
Yep.
8:30 a.m. to 6 with a hour and a half of lunch break. In the past 4 years that I've been at this company, never have I left at 6, and
Yep.
never have I done 90 minutes of lunch.
So
The most
so
I've done is like 30 minutes, I think.
so then how does that so now that brings an interesting couple questions to my mind here, okay?
Hmm.
The I do have one specifically for you to answer, but um for I'll ask that one first actually. So do you feel valued at work?
Yes and no. I don't know. Like, yes, I feel valued because they not only do they tell me, you know, like I feel like I'm important. They
Yeah.
also, compensate, reward me, at the end of each month. Um, I think maybe not as valued as, like, if I compare my company, which is a small company.
Mhm.
So if I compare it to other companies in the same industry, the same field or whatever, they definitely pay like twice or
Yeah.
three times what I am currently earning. So yeah, I feel valued in that it's a small, like, not family, because it's not family owned, but it's a small company and it feels like a family and all that. But it's kind of dangerous when it gets to that point where you feel like you're part of the family or whatever, because
Yeah.
then you forget that, wait a minute, I'm just another employee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of stuff I do when I do overtime, and I don't get paid, mind you, but I get paid for 40 hours a week and that's it. It's not
Yeah.
like if I do um extra, like I'm not getting paid extra.
Yeah.
So in my mind, when I'm doing, it's like, well, I love these guys and I want to be there. I want to make sure the company, does well, and I want to be able to finish my job, because I don't like half-assing things. I don't like
Yeah.
things just being left undone. Uh and so, like, in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm kind of, as a favor, I'm going out of my way and I'm sacrificing my time and and really my mental health as well, um, just to get this done, because I feel like I'm part of this whole family thing.
Yeah.
But then I go home and nobody tells me, like, because sometimes I go home like at 7:30, 8, and I'm
Yeah.
the last one there, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and nobody's there to be like, "Oh man, you stayed here so late. Thanks for doing that." Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like they don't say stay here. I stay. Like, I decide to. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm the one. Like, no one's there like behind my neck and be like, "Hey, you got to stay here. You got to make sure this is finished." No one does that. So in a way, it's just me punishing myself for really no reason. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting paid anymore. Like, if they told me, look, every hour you put in, we'll pay. I'll sleep at the company. I don't care.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not the case.
See,
And I don't
and
know.
that's the thing that I have with a lot of my, not really my employees, because some of my employees, they're just hourly, so they have to clock
Okay.
in, clock out. So I make sure that they, come in and leave on time. But this is a conversation that I have with a lot of store managers or a lot of salaried employees, and
Hmm.
you had touched on a few things. By all means, you can take it if you want, but what I tell them, because we had this one, and I was even like this when I first started, until a good friend of mine pulled me aside and gave me this talk, right? And
Hmm.
it was, you should always take your lunches, okay? Um, don't ever not take your lunches, because one, you're not paid for that. Two, they will not value you more because of that.
Yeah.
Then we are on the clock from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. You leave at 5. No matter what happens at 5 o'clock, you should have everything wrapped up and out of the door. And you have to take your time serious. And it took me so long to kind of get in that headspace of taking my time seriously. But what it all boils down to is respect for yourself.
Yeah.
And when we go back to that first question, when it's time to quit, I think it's when you start respecting your job more than yourself. If
Oh,
you're,
I do that every day.
yeah, and that's I think that's when it's time to reevaluate a few priorities, right?
Sure.
Not for you. Like if your situation right now is ideal, then okay, you do what you got to do. If it's not
Yeah.
ideal and you're
Some
fighting for
people
changes,
some people might be able to handle that. Like I can handle, like I'm okay mentally, you know? Like I can
yeah,
still um but it is something definitely that it's hurting me slowly, you know, like
yeah,
slowly but surely it's getting to me, you know. And I'm 100% like conscious of that, you know. And
yeah.
that's the worst part, when you know what like the bad that it's doing you, and you're still doing it. Well, yeah, you're still not like intentionally, but like there's no helping it. Once I'm in the moment, I'm working, and honestly, there's been weeks where I haven't stopped for lunch, like not even one day, and
Yeah.
that's a
So
little bit has to do what?
let me ask you. Okay, so
Yeah,
you don't have lunch, all right? And I guess you said it's 90 minutes, which is a fucking luxury over here in the states. We get 30 minutes, 15 is
yeah.
typically the most common. But let me ask you, what value does that bring to you, and what value does that bring to your company when you sacrifice 90 minutes?
Well, honestly, it has to do a lot has to do with we're pretty short staffed just year round, because like I said, it's a small company. I think total there's 10 of us, and that includes the two like CEO, or not, they're not both CEOs, but they're co-owners, and they're like they're also in it with us. Like they're also working, you know, like they're our bosses, but we really work, you know, uh we're just side by side working together. So they're part
Mhm.
of the team as well. Um,
Right.
but it's just 10 of us, including them too. And so that means that if someone's sick, if someone is on vacation, if someone just whatever it may be, then everybody else has to pull that much harder. And usually that is me, that the one that pulls a little bit more. Uh,
So, as
yeah.
somebody who I grew up with, okay,
Yes.
and we okay, what
Yes.
most of my phrases and most of my life morals I have retrieved from movies, okay? All right. So
Yes.
I'm gonna brace you for that one at first, okay? Um anybody that
Can I
is
guess the
not
movie? Or are you gonna? Oh, were you
you
gonna use
no,
the?
you'll get it.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll hear it and then you can guess the movie right after, okay? Because you'll know it as soon as you hear it. Um so anybody that is not my wife,
The
my
SpongeBob
daughter,
SquarePants movie.
or you got guts. You got guts, kid. Too bad I gotta rip them out of you. But anybody that's not my wife or my daughter, or I guess my immediate family, like my mom and
Mhm,
Joe and all that, right?
mhm.
Um, it's a corporation. So at my business, right? Oh, we gotta work late. We gotta clean up this store. Blah 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 blah. The number one phrase that I live my life by is "fuck you, pay me." All
Mm.
right.
Oh yeah.
Fuck you, pay me. Your wife is sick. She couldn't come to work and now I have to pull extra weight. Fuck you, pay me. Okay? What movie is that from?
That's Goodfellas, right?
Yes, sir. Fuck
Yeah.
you, pay me. All right?
Yeah.
And that is the mentality I recommend for anybody working for a multi-billion dollar corporation. If you work for Walmart, if you work for whatever centers exist in Spain, if you work for just whatever corporation, okay, the Samsungs, Googles, all that shit, okay, they have money. If you are
Mhm.
selling your time to this company in exchange for money, everything you do that is time within that corporation and not time spent with your kids or your family, fuck you, pay me.
Yeah.
Okay? If I have to work an hour late, fuck you, pay me. Otherwise, I'm leaving at 5, and they will hit you like in the boomer language, that a lot of people will use these days is, oh, the work ethic isn't there. And it's not
Yeah,
a
yeah.
question of my work ethic. It's I have zero issues. I will work a 15-hour, 16-hour day. but you're going to pay for every penny of it. Any second that I'm not at my house with my child, you are going to pay for. You're going to pay for my ride home. You're going to pay my gas. You are going to pay for this. You're going to pay for that. Mileage. You're going to pay for the wear and tear on my vehicle. Because every second that is not spent with people that you love, right? You can love the people you work with, but it pales in comparison to that beautiful lady you have at home or your family, right? I would, your beautiful dad. Okay. Shout out to that guy. Any minute that's not spent with them needs to be compensated for, because you're trading those minutes, those valuable, precious minutes that are never promised, to a company that will replace you within 2 weeks if you drop dead today. Okay.
Amen.
Every aspect should be fuck you, pay me. That family culture is a corporate designed thing to keep people happy in less than ideal situations. Every time.
Keep them blinded a bit,
Yeah, because that's what Walgreens tries to do. Hey, how are you doing? Thank you guys so much. It's the proverbial pizza party from corporate after you've just slaved for 12 hours. Like, I don't want pizza, man. I want an extra 100 on my check for being here 2 hours, past when I'm supposed to be here. This wasn't in the agreement.
And I know, like, 100%, like, all this, which I definitely needed to hear from someone else. I've told myself 1,000 times, and that's the problem. Sometimes you tell yourself the same thing, like where you're at. Going back to the same situation you're in, like you had to tell yourself over and over again, but for some reason, obviously, that wasn't enough, and you had to, tell somebody else, and here you are, explaining your situation. I think it's like, until somebody, that you respect, somebody that you admire or whatever, doesn't say those things, it doesn't really click for you. Even if you've told yourself 1,000 times the same exact words, it doesn't really click. And it's like, you just keep doing it. And sometimes it can be that you're doing it because, look, there's some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, all right, I know what I'm in this situation. I know it's not healthy, and I know that it's killing me, but, like, I see that light right there, and I'm inching myself towards that light, right? And I know I'm gonna make it there. It's gonna be hard, and it's gonna be tough, and it's gonna suck, but I'm gonna make it to that light. And once I'm through that, I'm out, and something brighter is on the side. If that's the case, then all right, more power to you.
And then for people, because I had the same light, and that light was taken away from me. Okay, so again, I'm a high performing store manager. I was considered a very high performing store manager for years.
Yeah.
And my light at the end of the tunnel, my reason for busting my ass and working late, well, believe it or not, it was not the bonus. Because again, a bonus is a bonus. If you get it, it shouldn't hurt you. Or if you get it, or if you don't get it, it shouldn't hurt you. But if you do get it, it's a bonus. It's like, oh shit, hell yeah, bonus. What hurt me is my promotion. My promotion was my light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
Up until July of this year, I thought I was the next guy getting called up. And then when they fired half of the corporate employees, and which made the door a lot narrower, my light is gone. My reason to just destroy myself for this corporation is gone now. So now what do we have left? What am I destroying myself for? Nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it the bonus? I mean, sure. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, yeah, it helps. But at the end of the day, that's not what keeps me going. It was the fact that I was going to be valued so much that I would get promoted. And when that light is gone, and you have gone through your entire year questioning yourself, what am I doing wrong? What can I do better? What is the problem with me? Me, right? Take a step back, look at your surroundings, look at what you have, and appreciate that first, because you don't need any more or any less than what you have at home. Okay, whether that's under a bridge somewhere or somewhere else. Then it's respect yourself, respect your time, respect the people around you. You should be smiling at everybody that you see. and you be that respectful person that people can look to. And then the last thing is fuck you, pay me. I'm trading all of these moments that I could be with my kid for you. I need to be compensated,
Yeah.
right? And I hate sounding like that parent that just always references their kid as like the most important thing. But for me, she is. I've always wanted to be a dad. So for me, it's like any moment that I'm not with her is something I better be getting paid for,
Right.
plain and simple.
Yeah. No, that's
So,
what I mean, 100%. I agree with that. I mean, I don't have kids of my own, but I know that's my mentality because I
well, for
also want to be a dad, and that's
well, for you, it's your lady, right? It's your lady, it's your family.
yeah,
Okay, it's the
yeah, no,
same
no,
thing.
for
I
sure.
moved, I moved.
Yeah.
So,
No, no,
uh,
no, but like for me, it's like like I think if I work hard enough, at some point, you know, there will be something better. And the problem is
yeah,
like unless I look for that something better, no, there ain't. Like
yeah,
there ain't gonna be something better if I don't look for it. It's not just gonna like drop down from the sky. So yeah, I'm working hard, and like you, I don't care if I have to work hard. Like that's not.
yeah.
I'm not
That's not
against
the
working.
problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So, and I'm doing it now without, getting any extra reward for it. But I do think that for the at least my plan for now, like you kind of had your plan laid out a little bit. That mine is like at least another year, maybe two, enough where I can, maybe look into some sort of like another sort of venue or something that I can go into that's like my own,
yep.
because I did, maybe take advantage of one of the like the degrees that I got, for like computer engineering and programming and all that stuff. Be it with that, like making apps, games, whatever it may be, something else that I can do my own because that time at least that I'm putting into it, I know I'm going to get rewarded, because the more I don't want to say the more I work, the more I get paid, but I
Yeah,
know that at least that I'm working for myself and I'm not selling my time for like to somebody else,
yes,
and I'm doing it for me.
a
I'm not
100%.
saying like enslaving myself to whatever that may be, that project or whatever, because I also know how important it is to have free time and enjoy
Well,
life and
see,
living.
you sh- you should enslave yourself to your dream. You
Yeah,
should do that. And again, and even if you don't have kids, you don't have a wife, you don't even have dogs, all you have is yourself, right? And I'll say cats too, sorry.
yeah.
But
She kind of
for
stared at you for a bit, like she's like, "What?"
but for people that just have themselves, man, like this could be for anybody. You should always, if you're not working towards your dream, you need to be compensated for it.
Yeah,
Any moment that I am not at complete bliss, I'm gonna be compensated for it.
yeah,
Any hour that I'm not spending working on my new app development, my new website development, my new, whatever project, any
mhm,
time that I'm not getting to spend on that, I need to be paid for, and you're gonna pay it. And if you're not, then you're not getting my extra time. And
yeah,
I would give that advice freely to anybody, because feeling valued, feeling respected, choosing work over mental health, all that stuff, it can be isolated to just you respecting yourself, your time, and your goals,
yeah,
right? And then drawing that boundary and seeing past corporate and company bullshit. Because when you have your own company, you're gonna have to trick somebody to work just as hard as you are right now.
yep. And
So
it's all not all about work. I think another thing that, and just because I'm sure in a bit we're gonna close off on this episode, but I do want to end
yeah,
on like the positives or what to do. I think a very important thing to have is a gratitude list, and I actually been wanting to do one of my own, where each morning or each night or whatever, you write down the things you're thankful for, grateful for today.
yeah,
Like kind of like how you did, where you went into your daughter's room and you're like, all right, well, what does she have? She has this, so you can be like, I'm grateful that my daughter has
yeah,
a bed. I'm grateful
yep,
that I have coffee today. I'm grateful that I got to shit
yeah.
in a
Be
toilet and
grateful.
not outside. I'm grateful that I have a roof on my head. Stupid. It could
Yeah,
be whatever.
yep,
But by doing so, you start changing your perspective on what you do have and what you do need and what you don't of all those things. Like because going back again, when you're working, day to day, your day is shitty, whatever, you're blinded to whatever is around you, those your loved ones, your things that you do have, and you maybe don't value, and you should, because at some point you bought that, and you're like,
Yep.
I know I'm going to use this or whatever, and then you don't realize like you're using it every day, and at some point that was the thing that you wanted, like if you buy a TV or an Xbox or whatever, you're like, oh man, I finally got one, and then now you're like, oh shit, yeah, I got this, I'm gonna play it,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna
Yep.
watch this TV. But you don't realize, oh, at some point this TV I did not have,
Yep.
and now I've got it, and I'm not valuing it. I'm not
Yep.
saying like give it every inanimate object in your house, give it a name and a soul or whatever, but like have gratitude for all those things around you, be it objects, be it people, be it whatever. I think that's very important as well.
Yeah.
Because that changes your perspective on life, and maybe it's not as bad as you're thinking, because at the end of the day you're making it that Snickers, when you don't get something, it's that Snickers bar,
Yep.
because that initial sting of them being like, oh man, I wanted that Snickers, like you said,
Hmm.
like I wanted that bonus. Well, you
Yep.
didn't get your Snickers today, man,
Yep.
but that
Yep.
doesn't mean that you don't have something else at home, or you won't be able to have a Snickers in the future. Like that's another way to look at it. It's all about perspective.
I love it. I love it. And just as I always do, as we close out, I do have a question for you. Um,
Yes.
what brings you value in your life? What's one thing that you can look at that brings you back down to earth?
Mm, tough question for sure, but I really think I think those little moments, be it's not a specific thing, but those little moments where you're like, yeah, like this, brings a smile, be it having, like in your case, maybe it'd be with maybe your daughter or whatever, but for me it might be with my girlfriend, having lunch or just watching a movie or whatever it be, and being able to put my arm around her. That sounds all like lovey-dovey and all that shit, but that
No.
moment could be something that brings you value, or it could be laying in bed and then having your cat jump on you and you're like, oh yeah, because it's getting colder, so she's a little warm, and you're like, oh, that's nice, you have something
Yeah.
to cuddle with, that's you know and
Yeah.
it also has claws, so it's not as nice. But or just being able to go out for coffee, go out for a walk, having the beach here, and be able to go out and walk by the beach, and just talk about random stuff with whoever it be. In this case, it'd be my girlfriend, but it could be a friend, it could be my dad, it could be anything. And having that brings value to my life. So even after we just spent this whole episode talking about work and how
Yeah.
being valued monetarily, economically, in the end, at least to me, it's that money that facilitates those things that actually bring value to my life.
Yeah.
That money is not that the value itself, but it's what that money can get me, or what it can facilitate. um, and I think that goes for a lot of people, I'm sure. Like, even if it is you're playing in the woods with your daughter and some sticks, and that's free, sure, but then you go back to the house that you're paying for with your money.
Yeah.
So in some way or another, money does bring you that which can then open up other things that bring you value, like real actual value. Not the money itself, but just everything else that you can get with that money.
Definitely. So with that being said, whoever's
Yes.
listening, go hug your loved ones, hug your cat, hug your dog, hug your kids. And
Fuck
thanks for
you,
coming
pay
on
me.
over. Yes, fuck you, pay me. Title of the episode. Yep. So thanks for coming on over, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Always good to be here. And I value
All right.
you.
Oh yes, absolutely. You are valued. All right, man.
Until the next one, boy. Bye-bye.
Bye.